Good evening again on behalf of the presidents. Tonight's topic, before I hand over to Mike, is really we're back. And what I've noticed is that Roland's been fielding a lot of questions. What can we do? How can we do it? And I think that's just going to be a general discussion. And while I see a lot of the elder or more mature brethren on board, it's a good thing because you'll be able to relay it to your lodges and maybe take the pressure off the district. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Mike. Mike, over to you.
Thank you, Brother Lance. Brethren, good evening. Welcome to another episode of Masons at Work. Good to have you all here tonight. We're fortunate to have with us tonight the District Grand Secretary, and he's wearing his hat as the District Grand Scribe Ezra as well. We're going to have a bit of a chat with him tonight. He's going to answer some of our questions and, just a general information session on, some of the smaller little details, and a lot of things has changed with us resuming labor now after the lifting of the last suspension. I'm sure all of you have got a lot of questions and, a lot of the small little things like asking for dispensation. A lot of meeting dates have not been met. And most of our questions does come from the district, and some of them are common questions, some of them are not so common questions. During the talk with Brother Roland, if you've got any questions, please post them to the chat group. If you want to remain anonymous, direct them to Brother Lance Epstein or to me directly. Or you can wait till the Q&A session after the talk. We're just going to have a quick question and answer if there's anything that we did not cover. With that being said, I'm going to pose a couple of questions to Brother Roland, and let's get started.
Mike, if I may, I would like to just open with a couple of comments, just in general, if you don't mind.
Please do.
Brethren, firstly, thank you for being here. I think when people hear the District Grand Secretary is going to give a talk or answer questions, the people start falling asleep and nodding off before we even open the session. But I think it is vitally important from an administrative point of view that we get together on a semi-regular or irregular basis and just chat about some of the administrative roles and functions around the district, because unfortunately, that is actually what keeps our district going, is the admin. Brethren, over the last 18 months, we've been in a state of severe uncertainty in relation to Freemasonry, not knowing when and where or how or if or can we or should we meet. And I think that we were very fortunate that Very Worshipful Brother Van Gaalen lifted the suspension when he did, and made the decision he has made. And now that the suspension has been lifted, we're heading towards a period of, and I don't want to jinx this by saying this, but revised normality. Just from a district secretariat perspective, over the last 4 weeks, in essence, since the suspension was lifted, we have fielded a number of queries relating to lodges changing dates of meetings, asking for dispensations, emergency meetings. What are the COVID protocols? What are the new installation protocols? Things like this. It has been an astronomical and unprecedented surge of requests coming through this office. We've issued in excess of 40 dispensations in the last 4 weeks. Now, you sit there and say, well, so what? We don't normally issue 40 dispensations a year. So for us to have issued 40 dispensations in the last 2 weeks, in the last 4 weeks, is actually something quite incredible. And what's very interesting, and I can give you the good news on this, is that not one lodge since lockdown began has been charged for a dispensation. Yeah, you've been charged for other things, and I'll come back to that and talk about that. But where dispensations are concerned, we haven't been charging lodges, and we knew that there was going to be an unprecedented demand for dispensations to change a date of a meeting, to elect and install on the same night, that sort of thing. We made a deliberate decision not to charge for dispensations. Unfortunately, as I say in the classics, all good things must come to an end. And so too will this little prelude to not paying for dispensations. The dispensations will continue billing, will resume billing for these things as from the 1st of October. But I think by then, most of the lodges that can would have already applied for dispensations to move meetings, manage meetings, things like that. This brings me on to the next point, which is lodges during lockdown. Now, brethren in the country, we wouldn't notice this, but Freemasons Hall asked all the lodges and chapters meeting here to continue paying their rent that they would normally pay. And bar none, they all came forward and said, we'll do it. The reason we asked for that was because Freemasons Hall still got running costs. We still have to pay electricity. We still have to pay rates and taxes. We still have to pay a whole bunch of things, costs associated with managing Freemasons Hall and running the district. We don't have any source of revenue other than our membership fees and the rental that lodges and chapters pay when they come to Freemasons Hall. What we've also agreed, though, is that because the lodges and chapters, and thank you very much for that, to all those here this evening who represent a lodge or a chapter who continue to support Freemasons Hall during the lockdown. Seriously, on behalf of the President of the Board of General Purposes, Worship Brother Lance Epstein, I extend my gratitude to all of you for assisting us. And I'm pretty sure Lance, if he had a chance, would tell you over 10 minutes or so how much he appreciates it. What we've agreed is that all of those lodges that supported Freemasons Hall need to get something back in return. And the lodges are going to be holding a lot of emergency meetings. We hope they're going to be holding a lot of emergency meetings to catch up on workings that were missed during the suspension. Those emergency meetings between now and the end of June 2022 will not attract a rental charge. In other words, if you subsidized, if you paid for 5 meetings while we were suspended, I will give you 5 free emergency meetings between now and the end of June next year to help you catch up with workings that you may have missed. So I think there's just some good news on that part. Well, I hope it's good news, and I hope you perceive it as good news. But again, just to say that to the lodges and chapters that continue to support Freemasons Hall, thank you very much. We really do appreciate it, and we know that a lot of brethren are battling and suffering, but we've managed to sustain the building and maintain it, and now we're looking forward to a period of growth. And with that, Mike, I'm going to hand over to you, and you can start asking some of those very difficult questions I know you've got hidden there.
Thanks, Roland. Yeah, for some reason, the job of asking the difficult questions sometimes falls with me, but yeah, I think just as an add-on, I think it's it's wonderful news as far as the emergency meetings. This will help. A lot of lodges. I know we've got loads of candidates waiting in the wings, passings, raisings. That should help out a lot. But moving swiftly along, we'll get through these as quick as possible. I don't think they're going to be too difficult tonight, but it's still early. So one of the recurring questions, and this is more with lodges, resuming ceremonies of initiation, passing, and raising. Out of curiosity, how long do you think we will still be using the adapted ritual? Is it likely to continue beyond 2021?
Well, so from a personal viewpoint, I hope not. But I think let's be realistic about this. COVID is not going to go away quickly. And the threat of COVID is not going to go away quickly. We take our lead from the District Grand Master Designate, or the Deputy District Grand Master in charge. And he's looking at it very seriously and scientifically. And he's applying a very mature methodology to his strategy. How long will we carry on using adaptive ritual? I can tell you for the rest of this year at least, probably into the early part of next year. I think it depends on a number of things. Do we have another wave? Do we have a 4th wave of COVID? How many vaccines do we get managed out there? It depends on really where this virus goes and what it does and how it trends. But I don't see us stopping using the adaptive ritual anytime before next year.
Thank you, Roland. Yeah, I think that will answer most questions around this topic. And then, without spending too much time on this, can you please give us a short run through of the COVID protocols when arriving at any temple, and also within our lodge rooms throughout the district? Just a short rundown of the protocol, and especially the most important things that we need to comply with and the biggest changes.
Sure, guys. I think it's very simple. Sanitize often. Wash your hands. Please wear a mask. Complete the attendance register. Not because we want to know who was there. The register that we ask you to complete when entering a building is there for tracking purposes. If something is identified to have happened, we know you were there. We can track you, phone you, warn you, alert you that something potentially has happened. Please either self-isolate or take the necessary precautions. Try and maintain a social distance as much as possible. And again, sanitize, clean your hands as often as possible. If you pick up a bug on your hands and you sanitize, it cleans the bug, kills the bug. It doesn't get into your face and your nose. If you're wearing a mask, you're not going to stick your fingers in your nose or your mouth. These are just basic rules. Wash your hands, sanitize, wear a mask, keep a social distance.
I hear you. I don't think anyone is going to complain if you sanitize too often or too much. At Freemasons Hall in particular, I've heard this question a couple of times, and I think we should put this to bed. Is there a difference between the sanitizer and the cleaner provided, which are clearly marked, by the way?
Yeah, there's actually quite a big difference. The sanitizer is alcohol-based, and that doesn't expire too quickly. So we top up the sanitizers on a regular basis. The cleaner is Jik. It's a Jik solution which gets wiped out every day. We dump that every day when we wash the cloths, and we fill it up with a fresh Jik solution. That cleaning solution expires after 24 hours. That's why we dump it every day. So the cleaning solution is for cleaning the items you've touched, and a nice Jik solution will clean all the germs, kill all the germs and the viruses and things. The hand sanitizer is for literally that, sanitizing your hands and making sure whatever you're touching is sanitized. So just from a Freemasons Hall perspective, please don't use the sanitizer to clean, use the cleaning solution. At the end of each meeting, when we ask you just to spray down the surfaces you've touched and wipe them with the cloths, that's what the cleaning solution is there for. It's a Jik solution, and the sanitizer is an alcohol-based solution.
I don't think, most of us really appreciate the phenomenal amount of effort that goes into behind the scenes. This is a huge undertaking to implement all these protocols, and we can just thank you and your team for endeavoring to keep us safe whilst doing what we love. Then we are also one of the more popular ones. If a lodge has not met for an extended period of time during COVID, what steps do they need to follow to resume their lodge meetings and perhaps their installation? What is a startup procedure to get the lodge back into labor and permissions from district, those type of things?
Wow, this is quite a loaded question. I think to keep it as simple as possible, guys, the first thing you do is issue a summons for a meeting. If you're having a regular meeting, you have the meeting. From a lodge chapter perspective, understand if you've missed your installation, you've missed the installation. Similar to what we went through last year, the current team just carries on in place until the next regular period of election and installation. There are a whole bunch of rules. If you read them, Rule 105, 106, 107, 108 of the Book of Constitutions, the COVID amended emergency protocols give us permission to do certain things. But these all have to happen within a certain period of election and installation, which is specified in your bylaws. If we miss that period, we can't do anything. We need to actually just accept it and move on, that we're going to be in the situation for another 12 months. So, but there's a lot of leeway we have. If you have a period of installation coming up, but you haven't been able to elect your worshipful master, we can get around that. There's no problem with that. We've got plenty of ammunition in the Book of Constitutions, the emergency COVID or the COVID emergency protocols, which is an extension until the end of this year of the Book of Constitutions. gives us certain leeway, which we can do. And if you're in doubt, just contact us. We'll happily guide you along that route. But item number one, the Lodge Secretary issues a summons, gets the brethren excited, gets into the lodge, and you guys start just working. Just start working, just do it. And by the way, we'll talk about it a little bit later, but rule number 160 of the Book of Constitutions is going to become our new best friend, because rule 160 of the Book of Constitutions allows you, under certain conditions, to read out, ballot, and initiate a candidate on the same night. And that meeting can also be an emergency meeting. So go and read rule 160 of the Book of Constitutions. It's going to become our new best friend, especially coming out of COVID.
That's going to be quite helpful. And basically, just in a nutshell, you've touched on this. Can a lodge ask for dispensation, and I see this coming up, to do if they miss the actual installation date, can they then ask for this dispensation to do it not on that date? Or what happens if it's longer than 28 days, that type of thing?
So any lodge meeting can be moved by up to 28 days, either before the date of as stipulated in bylaws or after the date stipulated in the bylaws. Once you miss that 28 days, there's not much we can do at all. So, which is what I said before. Unfortunately, if you miss that regular period of election and installation, plus the 28 days that you can move by dispensation, there's not much we can do. If you want to have, if the master's passed away and you've missed your installation, or the master's resigned, we can make an application to the Grand Master for permission to have an installation meeting outside of your regular period of election and installation. But that's quite a significant process. I'd prefer to avoid it if we can, but if it's a situation which is completely unavoidable, then again, come and talk to us. We'll guide you in terms of that decision-making process.
Thank you, Brother Roland. I think that covers it extremely well. Then swiftly moving on. Can you please elaborate on what needs to be done with respect to summonses during this time? And I know you said the first thing for a lodge to get back up and running is issue a summons. I'm talking more about the content of the actual summons, a lot of the differences that we have now.
Yeah. One of the biggest challenges I'm facing at the moment is the backwards and forwards between myself and lodge secretaries and chapter secretaries, trying to get their summonses right. There are a lot of very experienced secretaries out there in our district who are making simple mistakes or basic mistakes, not because they're silly or they're stupid, just simply because they haven't done it for so long. What I would recommend, please, brethren, is go back to your previous summonses and read specifically the agenda items, what should be on the summons, simple things like we miss out the risings, or we miss out on something like pending apologies to the minutes, simple things. We miss out on reading dispensations where dispensation has been issued. These are basic things which we shouldn't be missing, but we are, because we haven't done this for so long. So please, when it comes time to issuing summonses, please go back and look at your previous agendas specifically. And then the other thing, the one big thing we have, guys, is, and again, we're coming out of COVID, we're coming out of something we haven't done for a long time, and someone will phone up and say, don't we have a lodge meeting tomorrow? Or aren't we supposed to have a lodge meeting tomorrow? The secretary suddenly realizes he's got to issue a summons. We understand that happens, guys, but please start planning. You've got to start planning and issuing your summonses, at least 10 days to 2 weeks before the meeting. It does make your life as a lodge secretary, as well as our lives from a secretariat perspective, a lot easier.
Thank you, Roland. Then what happens if a lodge or a chapter meeting, and I would just like to remind everyone that most of the information here is applicable to lodge as well as chapter where applicable. But to get back to the question, what happens if a lodge or a chapter meeting was incorate?
All right. So firstly, let's examine the concept, what incorate means. In the Book of Constitutions, the Grand Lodge and Grand Chapter tell you what a quorum is in order to have a meeting. For a lodge, A quorum is 2 members as well as 3 potentially visitors. You've got to have 5 people at a lodge. The minimum is that you've got to have 2 members of the lodge. If you don't have 2 members of the lodge, you can't open. Even if you have 30 visitors, you've got to have 2 members of the lodge and 3 visitors. And of the visitors, you need to have a master or past master who can take the chair of the meeting. If your lodge is incorate, in other words, you can't get those 5 people together, then you have to abandon the meeting. And from a secretarial perspective, you need to then go and take your minutes of the meeting and say, on this day, we tried to meet, the following people were present as per the attendance register. Because the lodge was incorate, the meeting was abandoned. And you sign it off, we get your master to sign it off. And then that meeting goes into your meeting book as an abandoned meeting. Yeah, sorry, Mike, just one addition there. Guys, there's a subtle hint there, and it's actually a recommendation from Grand Lodge, that if the lodge members don't want to meet, then do that. Plan your meeting, issue the summons by all means, but tell the brethren, guys, we're not meeting, and then abandon the meeting because there's not enough members there to hold it. Make it incorate. It's one of the guidance measures or guidelines that Grand Lodge said to us. If you don't want to meet, if your members are insecure and unhappy about meeting, do that rather than just not hold a meeting. If you simply don't summons and hold a meeting, you're actually in contravention of the Book of Constitutions and your lodge bylaws, which nobody wants. But if you issue a summons and abandon it because nobody's there, no problem. We can do that. Thanks, Mike.
That was a very valuable piece of information. And then this question perhaps adds on to the previous ones, maybe just a bit more on the technical aspects. What happens to the actual meeting number in such a case? Do you carry on, count that as a meeting, a number, the next one subsequently?
Yeah.
What happens?
So, yeah, okay, cool. So each lodge chapter has a succession of meeting numbers. When we are suspended, those meeting numbers stop. When we resume labor, when the suspension is lifted, you then continue from the previous number, from the previous meeting. You don't count the meetings missed because of a suspension.
And the meetings that were incorrect, they still take up their meeting number. And
absolutely, 100%. You issue a summons for that meeting. So think about it, during suspension, no summonses were issued or shouldn't have been issued. Let's put it that way. And because the lodge wasn't summoned, that meeting number doesn't ever happen. But if you issue a summons and abandon the meeting, that meeting still happens. That meeting number must still be recorded.
That makes perfect sense. That clears that one up. Then again, you touched on that earlier. We might just elaborate on this a bit. What happens if a candidate was read out and balloted for an open lodge and the ceremony could not be done within the required 12 months?
Okay, so in terms of the Book of Constitutions, that ballot then lapses. Okay, and that doesn't change because of COVID. There's no change to that. However, Rule 160, again, I'm going to come back to this Rule 160. Rule 160 allows you to read an application, ballot for and initiate on the same night, where you can prove a case of difficulty or hardship to the candidate. Now, in this case, where you've balloted for someone more than 12 months ago, that ballot has now lapsed. At your next meeting, and remember, Rule 160 says it can be an emergency meeting, you then ballot for the candidate under Rule 160 of the Book of Constitutions, and you state in the summons, the hardship is the delay caused due to COVID suspension. And here's a really nice thing, guys. If you're going to use Rule 160 and you have a legitimate reason, you don't need anyone's permission. You don't need my permission. You don't need a dispensation for it unless you're having an emergency meeting, but then you need the dispensation for an emergency meeting. You don't need permission to ballot for a candidate and initiate him on the same night under Rule 160.
Thank you for giving us some insight on that one. I think that would cover most of it on the candidate topic. And then perhaps this is maybe quite an important one as well. if we can send in the correct information to district, we can ease the workload a bit and get everything done quicker and more efficiently. Perhaps if you could just cast some light for the brethren, what are the most common errors you are seeing on summonses? I know you did touch on that before. You might like to add something just to make all of our lives easier.
Yeah, so I think some of the things we're seeing is bylaws, changes to bylaws specifically. This has come up quite a few times. If you wish to make a change to your bylaw, the full change, in other words, the full paragraph that's currently in there, as well as the full amended paragraph, must be issued on your summons. If you don't do that, you cannot ballot for a change in your bylaws, and your summons has to be issued. If you're changing your bylaws, your summons must be issued 14 days prior to the meeting. You have to give 2 weeks notice, guys. You can't send it out the day before the meeting with incomplete information on it and say, we're changing our bylaws. No, I promise you I will reject it. And that's a sad part, because I don't like doing that, but we will do it. So this is one of the challenges where I've been going backwards and forwards with a lot of lodges who are amending their bylaws to say, guys, what are you amending? Where is it? I can't see it. And then I get the amended bylaws and I've got no idea what's been changed. And I have to go through it point by point with the model bylaws, which takes quite a bit of time, by the way. And then I pick up all sorts of other errors. So if you don't want me picking up other errors, don't do it. So
I hear what you say. On the bylaws topic, and I mean, this is not only applicable during COVID times, but it is worthwhile asking, appropriate time for a lodge to look at its bylaws. Should it be done yearly, 5 yearly? When should lodges look at their bylaws and decide to review them? How often should this process be looked at?
Every year.
Every year.
You should theoretically at the installation meeting, or prior to the installation meeting, or immediately after the installation meeting, you should look at your bylaws. You don't have to review them, you don't have to change them, but you should look at the bylaws and make sure that they are still applicable. Some lodges have made the mistake of including the subscription fees in the bylaws. And if you have done that, then you actually need to review your bylaws before the end of your financial year, so that your new subscriptions can be applicable from the beginning of the next financial year. And believe me, lodges and chapters who have their subscriptions in the bylaws should take it out. But anyway, again, please contact me if you have and you want advice. We'll easily help you rectify that.
That makes perfect sense. And if I might perhaps add in here as well, I saw the question coming up, but do you have templates and do you provide assistance to lodges that wants to redo their bylaws and bring them up to speed and up to date?
Absolutely. And I think, look, we're going to be rolling out probably early next year some secretary training, and one of the topics on the secretary training is bylaws, and we'll go in detail through the bylaws to explain each item on the bylaws, why it's there, what its function is, and how it can be amended or manipulated or changed from a lodge perspective. So that's definitely on the table for sometime early next year.
And lodge secretaries can just email you to get a hold of a template or something.
Absolutely.
A framework for them to work off.
Absolutely, yeah.
I think that's a easier route, than just trying to reinvent the wheel. Just get your hands on a decent set of bylaws from district. This is also one that comes up very regularly. What protocols or what procedure needs to be followed if a lodge meeting falls on a public holiday? All
right. So there's two things. One is, if you read the Book of Constitutions, there's a thing called prohibited days. And prohibited days are Christmas, New Year's, and UK banking holidays. Public holidays in South Africa are therefore available for you to hold a meeting if you wish to. Good luck if it's at Freemasons Hall, because we're not going to be open. So what I recommend, and what we generally recommend, is the Book of Constitutions then allows you, if your lodge meeting, your regular lodge meeting, falls on a prohibited day, which is a public holiday, or it used to be Sundays. Sundays have been taken out now so that we can have time to catch up. But if your regular meeting fell on a public holiday or falls on a public holiday, you may, without dispensation, move 7 days before or after that meeting. Okay. Only where your lodge meeting falls on a public holiday. Any other time that you wish to move your regular meeting date, you require a dispensation. Okay. But if it falls on a public holiday, you may, without dispensation, please notify the district because we need to know these, but you may, without dispensation, move 7 days before, 7 days after.
Wonderful. That also clears up a lot of things. Then, yeah, this is also maybe a necessary one for general information. What is classified as an emergency meeting and how does it work?
Okay, yeah, that's okay, not too difficult. An emergency meeting is any meeting outside of your regularly scheduled meetings in terms of your bylaws. So if you meet 6 times a year and you want to meet in between those 6 meetings, that's an emergency meeting. The process is you apply for a dispensation. In order to apply for the dispensation, I must have sight of your agenda because the dispensation is issued in terms of for business as per the agenda. If I can't see the agenda, I can't issue a dispensation for an emergency meeting. No business that is normally transacted at a regular meeting may be transacted at an emergency meeting other than, okay, and there's a whole technicality of, okay, but in other words, you don't do risings at an emergency meeting. Generally, you don't do charity collections. You essentially, you open the lodge, you read the dispensation for the meeting, you conduct the working, the reason that you're having that meeting, and you close the lodge. And that's pretty much it. There are certain things that you can do in emergency meetings, and there's a list of those things, and there's certain things you cannot do. And please, again, if you have any doubt about that, contact me or contact Fern. We'll happily guide you through that process.
Thank you, Roland. I just want to move swiftly along through the questions. We have received 1 or 2 more questions from the audience that I think is also important to get to. If I have spent a year in a lodge position without having done any meetings during COVID, let's say for instance, I got invested as a senior warden, am I still considered as having spent a year in that respective office, or does COVID have an effect on that?
No. So it's interesting because the Book of Constitutions talks about a year. They don't talk about how many workings you do and things like that. So theoretically, if you were installed as appointed invested as a junior warden or a senior warden immediately before lockdown, and you've now done nothing for the last 18 months, you technically qualified to take the chair of a lodge. So from a Book of Constitutions perspective, sure, you spent a year in that office. From a realistic perspective, I wouldn't feel comfortable advancing because I haven't done anything in that role. But from a constitutional perspective, absolutely, you qualify to move forward.
100%. Then one of those questions again, if I've not received my Master Mason certificate during COVID time and I've waited the appropriate amount of time, can I still be exalted into a Royal Arch chapter?
Yeah, absolutely. So, well, they need your Master Mason certificate number. That's what they need. So if you haven't got your Master Mason certificate, and your lodge secretary should contact me sort of the day after your raising to say, listen, I've got this guy, please send me through a requisition form or something like that. If you haven't got it, there's 2 things you need to do. You need to go find your lodge secretary and kick them in the posterior and ask them to sort it out. The second thing you do is you contact me. I will get your Grand Lodge certificate number, and I will forward it to the chapter that you wish to affiliate to so that they've got your Grand Lodge certificate number, and then they can exalt you because that number will be on their records. Technically speaking, they should actually see your certificate. But, in cases of emergency, we've done it that way in the past, where we've given the number and I just send it through on an email confirming that's the Grand Lodge certificate number, and the chapters are happy with that. Thank you for that one.
Then also, what's the protocol, especially during this time? I know it's more common now than ever, but What is the protocol when a master needs to remain in the chair for a third and even a fourth year?
Okay, so the Book of Constitutions states that a master shouldn't remain in the chair for more than 2 years. However, by dispensation, he may remain longer. Currently, what we're doing is if a master is wishing to remain in the chair for a third year, that's an automatic dispensation. We issue it without having to motivate through to anyone. And we understand the last 18 months have been a write-off, so we do it. Where it comes to a fourth year, and under normal circumstances, anything beyond 2 years, you need to actually motivate to the district grand master or the grand superintendent a reason why they need to stay in the chair for that extra period of time. They will then consider, the district grand master or the grand superintendent will consider that motivation and then come back and say, yes, you may remain, or no, come on, guys, let's sort it out. 99.99% of the time, they will say, yes, that's fine, thank you, we accept the motivation. And we haven't had enough requests for that to get to that 0.1% where he says no. So it hasn't happened yet.
That clears that one up. Before I get to the one important question from the audience, we all know that you've been extremely busy at Freemasons Hall. I don't know, I think you sleep there some evenings now.
Got my pillows here.
You've been so busy. Can you please just give us a bit of a sneak peek, or just give us a bit of news what's happening at the kitchen with the new kitchen, the new caterer, the plans for dining room 1. If you could just maybe elaborate a bit for us on that.
Yeah, absolutely. Awesome. So we've been through a long road and it's been a bit of a tough road, but we've revamped the kitchen at Freemasons Hall. And when I say revamp, I mean we now have what we consider to be a professional kitchen. We got our certificate of compliance from the gas yesterday. We're getting our certificate of compliance from electricity, etc., all the boring stuff that needs to go with this. But what we also have along with the new kitchen is we have a new caterer who is a professional chef who's currently running a business out of Freemasons Hall, which in my view was always the idea. We should always have had that person running a business there. What that means is that this caterer is now free to provide a service to Freemasons Hall at a subsidized cost, and we as the district are subsidizing that cost through a rental agreement with the caterer, where he gets a seriously significant reduction in his rent. And that reduction, he needs to now subsidize back into Freemasons Hall. So all the brethren who have meetings here at Freemasons Hall, if you're using the caterer, what you're going to get is, you're going to get hopefully a 5-star meal. I've tasted his food, his cooking. It is great. He's a good chef. He knows what he's doing. You're getting a good meal. You're getting a quality meal for a really good price. And also I've negotiated with him that there's no profiteering on meals and drinks. So the drinks are club prices. They are absolute minimal cost. Whatever he needs to cover his basic costs is what he charges back into the drinks and things. So there's that. There's one little thing that I've negotiated, that if you have a function, if you want to have a formal function at Freemasons Hall, or any functions outside of your normal lodge functions, I've negotiated that half of the bar profit comes back to the district. Now, if you as a Mason book a function, I give that profit back to you. I have no intention of making money on this. I want the lodges and chapters to get, so there's a cost associated with renting dining room number 1, and there's a cost associated with the caterer. But your bar bill, where the guys are paying cash, you have a potential getting some of that money back. And I don't want that money, but this is something where I've said, if you book a function, I will give you half of the profit on the bar back, just because you're a Mason. And hopefully that will encourage you guys to come and have functions at Freemasons Hall.
Oh, wonderful. We'll have to come and check out what you've been busy with over there. Thanks, Roland. If I could just touch on 2 questions from the audience, just quickly. I know we always try and keep these sweet and short, but I think the communication, you know, the information you're communicating is so, you know, so valuable and so needed, and there are, you know, legitimate questions, but perhaps a bit more of a difficult one, or not a difficult one, but will there be a record kept for brethren that have been vaccinated, or is any such thing on the cards?
No.
That's just...
We're not going to get involved in that debate. If individual lodges want to climb on that bandwagon and bar members, you might run into a bit of a problem. We have no intention of even discussing that. We're not interested. It's a personal choice, and we're not going to debate that personal choice, discuss it.
Then another one, and this ties in nicely with what you've communicated from you know, from the kitchen and the new caterer. Are there specific guidelines for festive boards regarding social distancing? If the lodges start having festive boards again, what are the guidelines there, or just the most important ones?
Yeah. So look, guys, here's the challenge. We say to you in lodge, keep your mask on and sanitize, and then we go into the dining room. What do? We take our masks off. Guys, we've got to be mature about this. We've got to keep the social distancing. And by the way, the caterers' details have been sent out to all the lodge secretaries and scribe Ezras from the chapters for all the tenants at Freemasons Hall. So every lodge or chapter that meets here should already have the caterer's contact details. Guys, we just got to be mature about this. Don't go and have a set of standards in lodge and then go and completely break it apart and hang on each other's shoulders and hug and kiss each other without your masks, Lance. We've got to be mature about this. So you know, if there's a huddle at the bar, rather step back. Let that huddle resolve itself, go forward. Keep sanitizing, keep decent spacing around the meals. But we have got one of the little projects that we ran at Freemasons Hall, and it really does only applicable to Freemasons Hall, is we've installed extractor units in every single dining room, which will move the air. So we're not overly concerned with people sitting in a closed environment breathing the same air. We've got extractor units there. We've got evaporative cooling units pumping air, clean air, into the lodge rooms. So these things are being taken care of, but it still requires individuals to be cautious and, you know, just take necessary precautions, really.
Thank you, Roland. Brother David Penrose, did you have a question regarding this?
If somebody is installed as a master in advance of his normal year, that means that at the next installation, which will now come up within a year, do the senior and junior wardens then qualify for the chair in a shorter period of time? Yeah. I think if you can just check that one up, because
sure. So thank you for that, David. Yeah, 100%. Very important question. So let's assume your regular period of election installation is on the 1st of the month, and you have to postpone that by 3 or 4 weeks for whatever reason, COVID, whatever. As long as you fall inside the 28-day rule, that's no problem. The Book of Constitutions specifically says that any wardens who are appointed and invested on that subsequent date will still qualify in terms of the rules to take the chair at the next regular period of election and installation. Thank you for that question, David.
Thank you.
Thank you. Brother Roland, yeah, that covers my questions I received from the audience. Brother Lance, anything from your side?
Brethren, firstly, I'd just like to thank Chris Adams and myself for doing such a sterling job in training Roland Dunstan. Chris, I think we've actually done a wonderful, wonderful job. Jokes aside, no, brethren, Roland has stepped into Roland's done some 260 hours this month, or over the last 30 days. I don't think you can appreciate how involved and the dedication of the man, and I seriously think he needs to be congratulated. At the same time, you can't be loved by everyone, you can only be loved by some, and he has to stick to the rules, and you know, let's respect that and take his advice. and just give him a bit of a break if you catch him at the wrong time. At one stage, Freemasons Hall didn't answer calls after 3 o'clock. You can probably get Roland up till 6 o'clock. With respect to the lodges that have paid their dues, I thank you for that. I know a lot of the senior brethren know that we do take a knock, a substantial knock every year, regardless of COVID. And especially with COVID, it's got even worse. And that is a problem. One thing I'd like to say is I am noticing in the summonses that we're opening and closing. Please, could I ask the brethren, if you're just going to open and close, you're not going to get the chaps there. Discuss the adapted ritual, even if it takes 15 to 20 minutes. Have a discussion about the first, second, or third, and just the minor changes there are. I think that's quite important. We've spoken in Korate. Please don't issue a summons and make it in Korate a week before. Just sort of abide by the rules and make it in Korate a couple of hours before the time. Let's not try, we're dodging it somewhat. Let's not dodge it completely. The bylaws, very important. Please go back to your lodges and look at the bylaws. I helped a lodge out recently. Their bylaws were dated 1976. I could have asked them to join the lodge for 20 Rand according to their bylaws. So I think that is quite important. As far as the kitchen is concerned, we are looking at trying to negotiate whereby a lodge will have a list of a menu. So it means that if Mike Smith is at lodge as a junior warden for 3 nights in a row and he likes curry and rice, you don't have to get curry and rice every night. So there'll be a menu and a name, and you can choose what you want for that evening. So if it's a Prego roll and chips or chicken Prego or fish and chips, you will have that choice. Encourage lodges to go on a trial about dining at 6 o'clock. David Penrose, Robbo, a couple of the elder chaps have a distance to go and some funny routes. Why can't we dine at 6, open at 7, and you're on your way home at 9:15? Even if we do it every alternate meeting, it is something we do need to consider. I think that covers everything I wanted to say. That's about it. I don't know if any other comments from the floor, but I do thank you for joining us. I think this has been of the utmost importance, and I think the few of us that are on can now submit it or assist the other lodges, your sister lodges or lodges where you're members, at answering some basic questions. So thank you all.
Please just email me. If you've got questions, send me an email. I'll do my best to answer you.
Rolly, thanks for that. Any last comments? Chris Adams, as a president's presentation from you, and then back to Mike.
Thanks, Lance. It's Chris here. And Mike, well done on that new trick you've got of cutting Lance off when he starts rattling on too much. That was really good, and I'm sure everyone appreciated it. Well done on mastering that technology. Thanks, guys, and good evening.
Thank you, Brother Chris. Roland, thank you so much. It's always extremely fun picking your brain. Thanks again for everything that you do. Brethren, it's been an honor and a privilege spending this evening with you. From my side, I thank you and stay safe.